useful tools and a discussion. So thank you, and that's the quick agenda. So our review, so we're a large system, so you just can see some of the facts there from a system standpoint. That blue, the light blue, that's where Memorial is. That's where a lot of the tertiary and quaternary activity for the system goes on. The one right here, Baptist Easley, which is non-red, that is a 50-50 joint ownership of a hospital with us and Palmetto Health in Columbia. Every other part of the stars there are different hospitals and are part of our system. This just gives you a sense of the philosophy that we've taken. So when I arrived at GHS, we had about 220 employed physicians. We now have 685 physicians either employed or directly contracted with us. If you add the other providers, about a little bit over 800 providers. So a large system. This has been a significant part of our growth and our strategy, and I think it's that physician leadership part that I'll talk about that makes this happen. This is our 100th year anniversary. When I talk highly integrated delivery system, for me that is the acknowledgement of how do we integrate with our physicians. Our physicians, no one comes to the hospital to see me, they come to see our physicians, and we have looked to, and I'll give a case study on how we've gotten our physicians much more engaged from a hospital standpoint. Our first class, USC School of Medicine, Greenville, really exciting stuff. Some of the communication stuff that we're talking about today will be embedded in the curriculum. Those of you that may be familiar, if I use the term Enneagram or Myers-Briggs, so it's personality type of things, we're actually talking about teaching our medical students personality types as a way of having that conversation. People present or come at the world slightly different based on their personality. Over 10,000 employees, high level of workforce commitment. We're even doing some research around that. And then our physicians rank among the top decile when we do, it's a national survey for physician engagement. 1.1 million workers, 450 facilities throughout the country. Our physicians actually outperform our staff in terms of their engagement in the system. And what is really significant for me on that is we don't ask our physicians, how do you rate the lab, how do you rate administration? They are part of it, of the survey, just as other members of the whole team. So it's not an outside view looking in, it's a member of the team. And the feedback that goes to the physician leaders, whether it's in medicine or surgery, comes directly from their physicians. So they're a highly engaged workforce. So some characteristics of the teams. We use this as a framework, so we talk about this. I talk about this at leadership. I do I do meetings, town hall meetings every 90 days, have done that for 5 years at GHS, see about 1,600 employees, different shifts, and we have this conversation. We have modules or conversations behind each one of these topics from a leadership standpoint, and we talk to our leaders about that. Some of the highlights that we'll go over today as it relates to communication, this whole notion of shifting from complaining to healthy responsibility. Whenever I round or interact with somebody, I always look for the complaint. That gives me the opportunity to see if I can help that individual shift. So that's sort of an administrative play on that. Concealing rather than revealing, especially information, but you know what our motives are. So again, we talk a lot about that. Facade to authentic feelings. It is not uncommon for a member of leadership or to say, listen, here's what's going on. I feel angry about that. I feel sad about that. We have really encouraged, I've encouraged the conversation around feelings to come out into the workplace. 2 other ones, defensiveness to curiosity. Whenever I feel defensive, I've developed a practice to get immediately curious around that, especially at home. My wife can trigger a defensiveness in me as quick as anyone. I've now learned to shift that, say, what's going on here? And I'll talk about how we talk about that within the organization as well. And then the shift from being right to being present. Just sitting in presence and getting stuff done and getting people to say what's on their mind and tell their story. The 4 ways, it's overly simplistic to talk about there's only 4 ways to be in the world. My goodness, there's lots of ways. But from an organizational and framework standpoint, this has been a good construct to have that conversation. At the organizational level, my big focus is to shift people from the to me box to what you'll see as the by me box. And we talk about this just about every meeting, some aspect of this. There's a triangle called the Cartman Triangle, villain, victim, hero. I think there's great application from what the prior speaker said on just how we talk to our patients, but how we approach the world with regards to that. And you might think, well, what's so bad about being a hero? This is something I point out to leaders quite often. What do heroes need? Heroes need victims. All right, so just remember that, and I'll give you a different construct to have that conversation or what we're trying to do. The to me box are where people are at the effect of stuff. They are at the effect of Obama. They're at the effect of Romney. They're at the effect of the economy. They're at the effect of weather. They're at the effect of they're at the effect of my mother-in-law. These are the group that take their energy away and give it to somebody else and then create a mood in them that is probably not the best for them fulfilling what they need to do. It's often characterized by questions such as, and I liked his earlier, why me? Or whose fault is it? It's sort of these why and who questions. And there's lots of shoulding going on. I tell you this, I recommend this, try to eliminate the word should from your vocabulary. Try to, especially at home. The other day, one of my 11-year-old, when I said something, said, Dad, did you just should on me? We have this conversation. Shoulding on other people is a very disempowering way to have that conversation at all levels within an organization, and for me at home as well. I think that shift occurs through personal responsibility. A lot of conversation around that, and this is just a different way of approaching life. So this is the main focus when we talk, and I've been talking around this at a leadership level for years at GHS, on what we're trying to do. So I really encourage people to reveal their feelings, to be candid, to reveal, to have authentic feelings, to be curious, to have integrity, and to really take healthy responsibility. And there's a different set of questions that come with this. And these are, what can I learn from this? And then the big one is, how am I creating this? So I've got a belief that if every time I go home from work and I get into an argument with my adult son or my child, or every time I'm interacting at work, I have a conflict with somebody, is that I somehow want that. Otherwise, it wouldn't be happening. Now, this is not a roll over and play dead and let people walk on you, but it does create a curiosity in me about why things are showing up in my life from a repetitive standpoint. So the key is awareness, presence, and just becoming conscious of this. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but I think the idea of surrender, you can look at the great spiritual traditions, you can look at wherever you come from a faith standpoint, this notion of surrender and allowing something bigger than what is you to come through into the world is really a big concept. I think it applies to organizations. I think that's where the University of South Carolina School of Medicine Greenville came. I think it was really a through-me experience for our organization. And then finally what I talk about at work, so this is where it sort of is a little bit goofy for a former Marine to talk about purpose and love. I want our organization connected ultimately to purpose and love. I think what we do is really fabulous, and I think tapping into that is incredibly important. So that's the construct of what we're doing. Back to sort of this other slide, and both of these slides are just different ways of saying the same stuff. Here are some of the things that I think is important to talk about. Truth and openness. I'll use this word accountability. Accountability is a word that makes my gut clench when I often hear it in an organization because it comes from a place of blame. When's the last time you heard somebody said, who's accountable for that, where you felt good? My sense on accountability, this is a personal issue. How am I personally accountable? What am I doing personally to make this happen or not happen? It's not an external accountability. It's more from a place of integrity. Discomfort, fear, risk of embarrassment. Like I said, jokingly, for a former Marine to talk about, feelings or emotions in a staff meeting, I was a little worried that the rest of the vice presidents were going to think I was a little bit goofy around this. And I think you take those risks. I think we do this in relationships. I think this is how great intimate relationships occur, and I think they can happen at work as well. This is the big question, and I alluded to it before. This is the what is it about me question. What is it about me that is having this show up in my life? It's really a big question. What is it about me? So here's an example, incredibly embarrassing. 2 weeks ago, in an attempt to get feedback from patients from our physician groups, we sent out an email to 5,300 patients, and the merge was wrong. And we sent emails to a patient referencing a practice that they weren't even a member of or a discipline that they weren't even part of. Okay, so hugely embarrassing. We're contacted them. We're doing that process of it. When this occurred, it was also interesting that I had received 2 other unrelated privacy issues that had come to my attention. So I have another rule of thumb. When things occur 3 times in my life, I think someone's trying to tell me something, okay? If I hear 3 different things, I say, whoa, step back and say, what's going on? So my response to that, to the privacy officer, I sent him an email. I said, I am curious about what is it about me that has an organization that is now disregarding privacy and security from a patient standpoint. And it flips the conversation. It doesn't mean we don't hold somebody accountable. We have a just culture. If somebody made a mistake, they'll be counseled for that. But it made me get into the game to say, gosh, am I not giving this enough time? Am I not giving it enough attention at an organizational level? So again, that shift from defensiveness to curiosity. All right, this has happened. What can I learn from this, and what can I do differently? What is it about me is not a self-centered question. It's an important question. And it's not a question that lets somebody else off the hook. When I say what is it about me, it doesn't mean my teenage son wasn't a knucklehead. All right? What it does mean is that I want to step into that conversation with a different energy, a different connection, and be more curious about it, and then still deal with his knuckleheadness or see what I need to do to change as well. So the shifting to by me by changing the questions we ask, I think that's the opportunity. This is where a lot of the focus from the employees is going. So again, tie back to the prior speaker, why and who questions tend to focus outward towards others. Who's to blame? Why is this happening? There's a real giving away of energy and power, I think, with that. What and how questions shift the focus inward, all right? So what can I do to improve this situation? How can I contribute differently to the conversation? You may come from it, gosh, it is difficult to communicate with administrators. Why? Who's to blame? And I'm just suggesting there's an opportunity to have a different conversation around it. How can I contribute to this? What can I do to change that? Or not change it. There's actually nothing wrong with keeping things the way they are in your life. I just request our leaders that we're very aware and intentional about that. So a personal case study, August 2006, new CEO at GHS. It was actually really contentious. There was an internal candidate who I have since become a dear friend with, and is actually, and I will say this is true. I could retrieve it too. A couple weeks ago, we traded emails back and forth. So this is the dean for the School of Medicine, and he has other responsibilities. And I think we both signed it love, you know. And it wasn't sort of mushy, but it was real deep appreciation for what each of us were bringing to a situation. That has never happened to me before in any other organization, and I think that's the kind of connection, and he was the internal candidate. I remember going to, as I was coming on board, one of the trustees, there's this beautiful bridge in Greenville called the Reedy River Bridge, and he took me on just before I'd been offered the job or accepted. He goes, now you know there's a good chance this core group of physicians is going to leave this organization. And I said, I can do this. I can do this. I don't know whether he was thinking I might jump or whether I was going to take the challenge. And I said, I think I can do this because I know how, and I have a desire to have a different relationship with physicians and physician leaders. So my big question is, what could I do to more fully engage physicians in the future state of our healthcare system? We started at the governance level. So now, we jokingly say, we actually now have more physicians than board members and administrators on a quality and academics committee. You might think, well, of course, but that was not the case. Our strategy, the research as we understand it, as I understand it, especially physicians, and there's an interesting book called Drive, but physicians in particular as a group really desire a couple things, is autonomy, especially around their practice. So that's sort of something important for us to keep in mind, especially as you saw how large we are. How do you still let physicians and encourage autonomy? And then the desire to be involved in strategy or decisions that impact them. All right, so those are the two big things. We have gotten physicians involved in the strategic direction of this organization at a very deep level, and we've embedded physicians and connected physicians throughout the organization, including who certainly reports to me. So we changed the medical staff bylaws. We instituted different committees for physicians to be part of. So we have a structure. My experience there is that if you have a structure, the organization use that structure to sort of convey the different strategy that we wanted to come forward. So again, not much new here, just different names on different committees that we use. But it was also important that this is the first time, and it was within the last 6 or so months, one of our campus presidents is actually a physician, a surgeon, and he's the president of our Hillcrest Hospital. So again, getting physician leaders engaged that way. There's, I think, a lot that the organization will look at to who reports to the CEO, and that will demonstrate a level of importance or at least an intent. I now have these 3 physician leaders reporting to me. Our Chief Integration, our Chief Medical Officer, our VP of Academics and University Medical Group, the large practice plan, and then the EVP for Medical and Academic Affairs and the Dean of the University of South Carolina School of Medicine. So again, important structural changes that have evolved over time. So the last thing I'll just say is, and I'll be happy to open it up for questions. I know that we're at our time, or just about at our time, but I'll be happy to do that. You don't have to be a CEO to ask from this. I think this is a real sort of personal opportunity, and my belief is that these issues start from within and then emanate outward, and either in the handouts or somewhere you can have a couple of different tools that we use. So the first thing that we've started training leaders in is this clearing model. Perhaps any of you that have gone through any kind of marital counseling or couples counseling may recognize a variation of this. If you've ever looked at Bradshaw and the Family or others, there are variations of this. This works at work. This works at work. I have had some really tender and significant conversations with directors. I have facilitated conversations between directors, and I think this tool in and of itself is a breakthrough. And what we encourage our leaders to do is talk about the facts. Again, talk about how it's impacting us at an emotional level, and then also talk about the story that's being made up. So often we see something and create a story, and that story takes us down a different path. What we ask is our leaders to get clear with each other and to have these type of conversations. So as recently as earlier this week, I facilitated a clearing conversation with another department director. This is a great model at work. This is a great model at home. This is a great model with a child. And I will tell you that this really works. And you don't have to worry about this other side. And you don't have to worry about if the other person knows the model or not. My experience at home is that this has dramatically impacted and changed the way I interact with my wife. All right, so this, again, is something that has evolved over many years. For me personally, It's been the last 3 to 5 that we've talked about integrating these techniques into work. I encourage people to sort of look at things. I hand this out pretty regularly. And it's an opportunity for people to assess where they are with different relationships that are critical in their life. So whether it's at work or whether it's at home. We don't share it, we don't turn it in, I don't tabulate it. What I like to do is just have people see where they are in their life with different relationships and become aware of that. And then the decision is, I want to stay right there. I don't want to move in one direction. And I think that's A-okay. I think awareness is the key. What I don't want is our leaders or me personally to blindly or just without awareness go through life. I want it to be a conscious decision that I am not going to talk to my sister. But at least it's aware, and I've made that decision. I want to have that conversation. And if I want to make that shift, then I want to know who to work on, who's important. And then the other one is the 15 commitments of conscious leadership, and we've just started talking about that one at a much higher level with my direct reports, but I think how we cascade some of that now will be really important. So 2 other quick and somewhat goofy books, if you've ever read, if you want to get a sense of some of these conversations that I talked about, The Power of TED, and then The Question Behind the Question. These are great little books for staff. And they really get, I think, people the ability, one, to clear and how to get through things, but then also to change how they ask different questions within their organization.